Over the past 75 years, more than 10,000 chemicals have entered our food supply, but the EU allows just 300 additives. At Thrive Market, we prioritize quality, banning over 1,000 ingredients found in conventional grocery stores. Our Healthy Swap scanner helps you find better versions of your pantry essentials without the junk, dyes, or fillers, and everything is delivered right to your doorstep. So shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health at thrivemarket.com/get-started for 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift.
Welcome to Think About It with your host, Jaden Miller.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to Think About It with Jaden Miller. I am coming to you on this beautiful Memorial Day. Wanted to give just a thought to all of those individuals that gave the ultimate sacrifice for us so that in this country we could be free. And so we thank those families, those survivors of those in the so many wars that this nation has been involved in order to ensure our freedoms. And so just wanted to mention that before I start. Also, I just wanted to because it's still so fresh in our minds, the horrible tragedy in Texas where 19 school children were needlessly and horribly killed, and then teachers as well. As an administrator, as an educational administrator, I certainly feel for them. I work in the school every single day, and this certainly has been on my mind, just like I'm sure it's been on your minds. And so just wanted to just take a minute just to mention them and to mention the fact that their families are grieving and will be grieving forever. This was a horrible, tragic situation. So, but as we begin, and I have my beautiful wife, Tanisha, with me again today.
Hello.
We're going to continue our conversation on the Fourth Amendment. But before we do, please like, share, and subscribe on my YouTube channel, and like, comment, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. You can find me on all of them: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Spreaker, Google Podcast, Castbox, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and so many more. Listen, you can also find out more about me on my website at www.jadenmiller.com. I am, at least in my mind, an accomplished photographer. You can find my podcast. All of them are there. You can find photography. All of that is there. You can even go to the About page and find out a little bit about me. And guess what? My wife is on there a little bit because, we have decided to really go into our wedding photography venture together. And so she's there as well. And so I just want to mention that. And while Tanisha is here, I want her to do a really quick shout out for her podcast. Go ahead, Tanisha. Tell them about it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I've just started a podcast and I'm only 2 episodes in, but it is Healthy, Wealthy, and Happy AF with Tanisha Caldwell. So yeah, look me up. I'd appreciate it.
All right. Very good. So let's get back into this. Last time on the podcast, we talked about the Fourth Amendment. All right. And we talked about the actual exceptions to the Fourth Amendment, but then in that particular episode we talked about Terry versus Ohio, when we talked about this new standard that the Supreme Court came up with, which was a reasonable suspicion standard. Okay, well, we're going to continue to talk about the Fourth Amendment today, but as I started, in light of the tragedy in Texas, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what are the Fourth Amendment rights for students in schools. And I think some of you may be surprised at the information that I'm about to share. But let's go back over the Fourth Amendment. What does the Fourth Amendment say? It says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Remember, the key word there is unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. As I've mentioned to you all in the past, where does the Fourth Amendment come from? It comes from, okay, the fact that the British government was really, really ugly and nasty to the colonists, okay? So when we look at that, those words, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, well, the colonists were not secure in their persons. They were not secure in their houses. They were not secure in their papers and their effects because British soldiers, at the behest of the British government, could violate their privacy at any time, okay? Could violate their security at any time, okay? And so our founding fathers wanted to put in our Constitution within that Bill of Rights, okay? These protections for us, okay? The protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. And the seizures part comes in where the British soldiers could just take you and arrest you and put you in a dungeon or a cell, okay? Or could simply just murder you, which they did very often to the colonists, okay? And so before they could bring you before a judge, okay, they had to have a warrant based upon probable cause, all right? Supported by oath or affirmation by a judge. So they couldn't just go get a warrant, okay, and just present it to a judge and say, hey, you know what, we felt that this person did this. No, before they could even get a warrant, they had to go to a judge and swear, okay, that the information that was going to be within that warrant was true. All right. So they wanted to make sure, meaning our founding fathers, that we had those protections against the ugly things, the ugly way that they had been treated by Great Britain. All right. So there's our history for the Fourth Amendment again. All right. So now, how does the Fourth Amendment, okay, apply to schools? Well, you know, again, in the Fourth Amendment, it was written back in the 1700s. There's nothing in there that mentions schools, okay? But my beautiful wife and I were talking about this the other day in how the country has had to move forward socially, okay? And as such, our written documents, meaning our Constitution, has had to move along with society, all right? So again, as we know, there was a period of time in this country that women did not have the right to vote, okay? And so over time, unfortunately, over a whole lot of time, okay, then women did gain the right to vote because socially we started moving forward as a nation, all right? Well, that same thing applies to the Fourth Amendment. So if it was written in the 1700s, well, they did not have automobiles and airplanes, okay? And then we didn't have, you know, situations where students were bringing guns to school or bringing drugs to school because they didn't have the kind of schools then that we have. So the United States Constitution, specifically the Bill of Rights, has had to move along with the times. All right, we can't be still stuck in the 1700s. All right. So then we also talked about the exceptions to the Fourth Amendment, and that's what we're talking about. If the country has moved forward, then we can't just literally, okay, stick to the words in the Fourth Amendment. All right, we have to go outside of the literal words that we see. All right, and so we have to look at things a little differently. And so there are some exceptions to the warrant requirement. Last time we got together, we talked about Terry versus Ohio, okay, and the whole stop and frisk situation. All right, the Fourth Amendment did not clearly deal with that. Okay, and so in 1968, in the Terry versus Ohio situation, the Supreme Court clarified for us that there are going to have to be some exceptions, and that one was based on a new legal standard called reasonable suspicion, which I will go over with you in a few minutes. It's so important that you know the distinction between what reasonable suspicion is and what probable cause is. Probable cause is mentioned in the Fourth Amendment. Reasonable suspicion is not. All right. So when we talk about schools, all right, we have to realize that when you are underage, all right, there is a limited expectation of privacy for you. Okay, I can make this very plain. Tanisha, so you have a house, okay, and your children are under the age of 18. And in fact, your children don't have to be under the age of 18 when they live under your roof, but they're under the age of 18, okay? Mm-hmm. Well, when we talk about expectation of privacy, does your 13-year-old child have an expectation of privacy in his bedroom in your house?
Not really.
Expand on that for us.
In a sense, I mean, he knows it's his room and things like that, and I'm not just like coming in and going through all of his stuff all the time. But he also knows that if, I need to or I want to, that I can. I can tell him to let me see his Kindle or, anything like that. Go through drawers. That's just what he would expect.
Absolutely. Okay. So in fact, as a parent, you have control over your minor children. Okay. It is your house. It is not their house. Now, we can say that it's their bedroom, but technically, no, it's your bedroom. You allow them to sleep in that bedroom. So at any time, okay, you want to go through drawers, you want to go through closets, you have as a parent the right and the authority to do so. Okay. See, it's a little different because we talk about parents. All right. The Fourth Amendment was not written for parents. The Fourth Amendment was written to prevent government agents from doing those things. So now, just like you as a parent can go into your child's room anytime you want to, the police can't knock on your door and say, well, your child is 14. I can go into his room at any time and go through his things. No, because the child is under the authority of you, the parent, who does have, free an expectation of privacy in your home. All right. Very good. So now let's move that to school. Okay. When your children are enrolled in public schools, and public schools can be those that are funded by the government. So charter schools are funded by the government. They just have different guidelines into how they're organized. Okay. But charter schools are public schools unless they're...
Over the past 75 years, more than 10,000 chemicals have entered our food supply, but the EU allows just 300 additives. At Thrive Market, we prioritize quality, banning over 1,000 ingredients found in conventional grocery stores. Our Healthy Swap scanner helps you find better versions of your pantry essentials without the junk, dyes, or fillers, and everything is delivered right to your doorstep. So shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health at thrivemarket.com/get started for 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift.
Private, but we're talking about public ones, okay? There's public schools, all right? Well, then when you drop your child off at school, all right, you now have given the school administrators, okay, including teachers, this Latin term called local parenti, okay? That means that your children now during school hours are under the authority of the teachers and the administrators until you come and pick them up, okay? And so they are able to tell your children where to go. They're able to tell your children no. They're able to tell your children, well, you're going to be disciplined for this. They're able to ask your children questions, okay? So as it relates to schools, there's a case, a United States Supreme Court case from 1985, and the name of the case is called New Jersey versus TLO. All right, TLO is the initials of a young lady that was involved in this case. She was 14 years old at the time. She was a minor. So that's why the case does not list her name, just her initials. All right. So this is the situation. All right. There were two girls in a high school in New Jersey, and they were smoking in the girls' restroom. They were caught by a teacher, and the teacher took them to the assistant principal. All right. Well, one girl admitted to smoking in response to the assistant principal's questioning. However, the other young lady, 14-year-old TLO, denied she was smoking and claimed that she did not smoke at all. Okay. Now, not believing her, the assistant principal demanded to see TLO's purse. And in that purse, he found a pack of cigarettes and a package of rolling paper. Rolling paper, for those of you all that are unaware, is something used to smoke marijuana with. All right. So the assistant principal searched further in the purse and found evidence that TLO was dealing marijuana at the school. All right. So TLO was then taken to the police station where she admitted to selling marijuana at the high school. All right. So now we have this situation of not the police, but a school administrator. Okay. And TLO's thing is, well, this person violated my Fourth Amendment rights. Okay. Wasn't that an unreasonable search and seizure? All right. So the Supreme Court had to decide this. Now, remember, I stated earlier that the Fourth Amendment is written for the people against government intrusion. Okay? But we have to ask ourselves a question. Are public schools funded by the government?
Yes.
Yes, they are. Therefore, in this realm, school officials are similar to, not exactly like, but similar to the police, okay? When they're acting in this manner, okay? When there's a case that deals with the Fourth Amendment situation, all right? So now the Supreme Court had before them, well, what do we do? All right? So is there an expectation of privacy? These are the questions that they ask. Is there an expectation of privacy for juveniles while they're at school? Okay. Next question they needed to answer was, well, do school officials need to adhere to the warrant and probable cause requirements under the Fourth Amendment like the police do? All right, so let's answer those questions, okay? Well, does the Fourth Amendment apply to searches conducted by public school officials? Yes, they do, okay? They do, all right? Because you can't just, as a school administrator, all willy-nilly just be searching people and seizing people, okay? But that's not really the most important part. The most important part is, do school officials need to adhere to the warrant and probable cause requirements of the Fourth Amendment? They do not. Okay? See, this is the thing, okay? When you're out on the street, you have a reasonable expectation of privacy, all right? And this is going to apply to both adults and to children. But Tanisha, when you go into an airport, okay, do you still have the same reasonable expectation of privacy that you do in your home?
Not at all.
Why not?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just understood that for security reasons, they have the right to look through all of your possessions.
Absolutely, because if you don't want to get on an airplane because you feel that that's violating your reasonable expectation to privacy, guess what? You don't have to fly.
Right.
Okay? You can say, well, I'm going to drive my car 2,000 miles across the country then. So you do have an option, right? Okay? So yes. So when we talk about a reasonable expectation of privacy, it's understood that, well, that is diminished depending on where we go. Okay? Based upon what? Based upon things that have happened in the past. So, you know what? Prior to 9/11, gosh, it was so much better. We could go to an airport, we could go all the way to the gate, and we could watch airplanes take off and come in, and we could hug our relatives right there as they got off the plane. Well, due to 911, guess what? Then our expectation of privacy, those rights have been limited for safety reasons, okay? And so this is what the Supreme Court is saying in terms of schools, all right? Well, when your child steps foot onto a school grounds or onto school grounds, that expectation of privacy is now limited. It's limited because you have so many other young people that are there, and safety is paramount. The safety of the other students, but also the safety of the student, okay? That may be in question, all right? So let's take a look at a couple of situations here, all right? For example, let's say that before we do that, we need to understand what reasonable suspicion is and what probable cause is. So let's do that really quickly, all right? So I'm going to give you the definition of both of those, all right? Just to make sure that you have a really good understanding of them. All right. So reasonable suspicion is that legal standard that came about in 1968. Okay, we talked about this last time we got together in the Terry versus Ohio situation. All right. So the United States Supreme Court ruled in 1968 that law enforcement officials can briefly detain someone if they have reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed, is being committed, or is about to be committed. While this standard relies heavily on the officer's judgment and much broader than probable cause, it must still be based on existing facts and circumstances rather than just a hunch or a gut feeling. All right, so reasonable suspicion is one in which a reasonable person would think that a crime has been committed, is being committed, or is about to be committed. So, for example, in the Terry versus Ohio situation, there was a police officer with a great deal of experience. He sees three guys standing outside of a store casing the store, looking in. And so based upon not his hunch or his gut feeling, but based upon his experience, he thinks that, you know what, and then someone that's a reasonable person looking at this will say, yeah, it looks like a crime is about to be committed. That's the reasonable suspicion standard. The probable cause standard is one in which is guaranteed to every American citizen, and that you have a right to freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures, and that probable cause must first be established. Well, what is probable cause? Probable cause gives law enforcement officials the right to obtain a warrant, make an arrest, or search a person or property. See, the difference between a reasonable suspicion in the Terry versus Ohio is that they didn't search these individuals, they frisked these individuals. There is a difference between frisking someone and searching someone. It's so important that you guys remember that, okay? All right, so probable cause gives police officers the right to search a person, all right? It gives them the right to obtain a warrant. It gives them a right to make an arrest. Reasonable suspicion does not give the police the right to do those things, okay? Just based on reasonable suspicion, you can't arrest somebody. Okay, it's the articulable facts that come after that then will get you to the point of probable cause where you can do all of these other things. Obtain a warrant if necessary, make an arrest if necessary, or search a person if necessary. All right, so the main difference between probable cause and reasonable suspicion is that probable cause means there is concrete evidence of a crime and that any reasonable person might suspect criminal activity. In contrast, reasonable suspicion occurs when any reasonable officer might suspect a crime. Okay, so probable cause is you probably did it and I've got enough evidence to go forward. Well, reasonable suspicion is, well, you might have done it. Okay, so there's the difference between those two. All right, so let's go back to schools for a moment. All right, so when we talk about schools, all right, remember, school administrators are not law enforcement people, all right, but they do operate under local parenti, all right? And what that simply means is that they're the parents of the children. So just like Tanisha, in your home, you're the parent, you can come into their room as necessary and search if you want to, all right? But the difference is there's a limitation on what school administrators can do than you, okay, at school. So let's talk about where you can have an expectation of privacy, all right? Let's talk about restrooms, for example, okay? All right, so in my school, we have cameras all throughout the open areas, the hallways of the school, okay? We do not have cameras in the restroom. Why is that?
For their privacy.
For their privacy, okay? Because you have a reasonable expectation of privacy in the restroom, okay? We don't want everybody to be able to go into the restroom and see what we're doing, all right? That's very true, okay? All right, so now we don't have cameras in classrooms. Why not? Is there a reasonable expectation of privacy in the classroom?
I guess so. I'm not exactly sure why, though.
Okay.
Why would you not have them in the classroom, but you can have them like in the hallways?
Okay, so let me answer that. So the reason why there aren't cameras in classrooms, for the most part, is because it could make the teacher and the children uncomfortable knowing that they're being watched. But a school could, I mean, if you think about it, you know, we've seen, you know, on YouTube and other places how classrooms are being filmed, you know, just to see the interactions between students and teachers, you know, to show how teachers are teaching a certain subject. So cameras can be allowed, okay? It's just not a general thing to have a camera on all while kids are, you know. And then also the reason why we don't have them in there is because what if there are some children that are acting up or something like that, okay? Well, do we want to record every single minute of a 12-year-old? 12-year-olds are going to misbehave sometime. Not all of them, but some of them will. And do we necessarily have to record all of that stuff all the time? We don't. We don't have enough bandwidth to do all of that kind of stuff. All right? But when children come to school, just like when you go to an airport, okay, there's so many other people there. All right? So I'm going to give you a scenario. So let's say that we get an anonymous tip, okay, that there is a male student that has a black backpack. Okay, they give us his name as well, all right, and say that that person has a gun in their backpack,
Okay.
all right. Now, we've had a little bit of history with this student before, maybe not so much guns, but some other types of misbehavior, okay. All right, so now we have an anonymous tip. So now remember, we've got to look at these legal terms, probable cause and reasonable suspicion and all of these kinds of things. We have to take into consideration that, there are other children involved. But we also have to think about, well, it's an anonymous tip as well. Is it a legal tip? I mean, is it a legitimate tip? So we've got to think about all those things. According to what the Supreme Court says, based upon that information and that information alone, okay, can we stop that student and search their bag?
Yes.
Okay, why do you think so?
That, I don't remember the word, but where you kind of are granting them sort of parental rights in some sense, and also for the safety of the other students and teachers in that school.
Absolutely. So now that would be that reasonable suspicion standard, okay? A crime might be committed, okay? Well, we don't know for sure, okay? So there are some things that we need to take into consideration, okay? We need to take into consideration that first, it was an anonymous tip, but does the anonymous tip seem legitimate? Okay, and we can think about that based upon our experience as teachers or administrators. Okay, we can think about, well, the history of this child leads us to believe that maybe this is true. Okay, but even if that history doesn't, we can err on the side of safety. Okay, all right. Now, as I mentioned that, guess what? There's another exception to the Fourth Amendment moral requirement, and that's the public safety exception, okay? We'll talk about that another time. But when we get a situation where, we can clearly articulate that, we got an anonymous tip. In the history, especially in the most recent history in this country, we have had lots of mass shootings at schools, okay? And now, wouldn't we be derelict and negligent as administrators if, based upon this anonymous tip, knowing that there have been plenty of other mass shootings, we say, well, it's anonymous, we're not sure, and then the student does have one and commits a mass murder. So we have to err on the side of safety. Would you not agree?
No, I definitely agree.
Absolutely. And so in that particular instance, the courts say yes. Okay. Now, the courts would say no, all right, if we got a call and the anonymous tipster said, you know what, there's someone in the 6th grade that has a gun. Okay. Now, how can we search everybody in the 6th grade? The Supreme Court does not give us that authority, because then that tip is not a specific tip. That's a general tip, okay? That's saying that somebody in the 6th grade, well, we have to take that with a grain of salt, okay? Well, do we have the resources to check every single 6th grader, okay? Well, is that violating to some degree their expectation of privacy and their rights? Yes, it does, okay? Because that's not reasonable, okay? Some lady calls and says, well, yep, everybody in the 6th grade. Does that even sound, come on, everybody in the 6th grade or somebody in the 6th grade? When it's more specific, this person, this is his name, okay? This is what he looks like. This is what he's wearing, all right? Then that gives us enough information to go after that one person. But we can't use information just on an anonymous tip that says everybody in the 6th grade or somebody in the 6th grade, because that's unreasonable, okay? All right, so the courts don't grant that authority to police, to school officials to say, go search everybody in the 6th grade, okay? No, it has to be clearer than that, all right? All right, so then, yes, you can then search their book bag, all right? You can ask the student, can I search your book bag? And this is the tactic that I use. I always say, do you mind if I search your book bag? Now, I say that, okay, because I'm polite. But I don't have to say, can I? I can just take the book bag and search it. But see, I don't want to leave a student with that impression. So I'll say, hey, do you mind if I search your book bag, okay? And I give them the option. They can say yes or no. And so when I'm reporting this, I can say that the student, did give me their book bag, okay? That seems a whole lot better than just taking it, okay? Yeah. So I can say, yes, they did say that I could search it, okay? What if they say no? Can I still search it?
Yes.
Absolutely, I can. I can still search it. They can always deny me the access to it in terms of verbally saying, well, no, I would not like for you to search it, but then I would search it anyway. Okay. It's the same thing with the police. You can tell the police, no, I don't want you to search my car. But if they have probable cause, they can search your car because they have the law on their side. Okay. And so in that instance, yes, I am going to search it. I'm going to go through the book bag all throughout the book bag. I can either do it myself or I can ask the student to do it. Now, depending on what it is that we're looking for. Okay, if it's a gun, you don't want the student to reach in there and get and pull out a gun. So I'm going to search the book bag. Usually what I will do in the case like this is I will have someone else with me, okay? Another administrator or another teacher as a witness to that. That's really good that you have a witness in situations like this, okay? But also, if it's you and a student, what if the student, you're a female and you're 5'1" and the student is 6'3", and he's suspected to have a gun? Well, you wouldn't want to have somebody else with you because he can overpower you possibly and then use the gun. And so, again, you certainly have the right as school administrators and teachers to do that. All right. So just remember that in schools, then when students step on the school grounds, their expectation of privacy has now diminished. It is limited. Okay. School authorities, while they are not police officials, okay, can, with reasonable suspicion, search. Okay. But again, it still has to be reasonable, okay? So we can't just go walking down the hallways and we see some young lady and say, hey, come here, I want to search your bag, okay? You can't do that because they still have an expectation of privacy and they still have Fourth Amendment rights. But, okay, if you have some clearly articulable facts or circumstances or something that comes to mind or has been given to you, then you can conduct a proper search. All right. Well, we're talking about schools, and I want to talk about teachers for a moment. Okay. So, an expectation of privacy. We know that it's limited for students, but what about teachers who are adults? Okay. So let's talk about the classroom for a minute. All right. Now, the classroom is a teacher's workspace. Okay. Tanisha, I've got a question for you, my beautiful, lovely wife. All right. Do teachers have an expectation of privacy in their classroom?
I would think so.
Why do you think so?
Well, that's their workspace. So just like anybody at an office, I don't actually know. I don't know if you can just go into somebody's desk and search it when they're at an office. Wouldn't the normal law apply there?
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. You may be surprised, okay? But let's reason for a minute, okay? Does the school belong to the teacher?
No.
It does not, okay? One of the things that I found strange when I first went to my school, my current school, is that everybody, including administrators and teachers, had a key to everybody's classroom, including mine. Okay. So right then and there, we know that, well, there is not an expectation of privacy because if someone else has the key to your classroom, then you have no expectation of privacy. Okay. All right. So I found that out very quickly when someone would just open up my door and walk in at any time. That was so strange to me. Right. Okay. But anyway, since the classroom and the desk belongs to the school, you do not have an expectation of privacy because it does not belong to you. It belongs to the school. Just like school lockers, okay? All right, many schools have done away with lockers. All right, our school does not have lockers, okay, in the classrooms or outside of the classrooms. Why? Okay, because there was always this issue of, do students have an expectation of privacy? Well, the Supreme Court has clarified that. The school lockers belong to the school. So when the students put their things in there, they don't have an expectation of privacy because the locker, that which they're containing their things, belongs to the school. Right. The school can open them up at any time. Okay. So if we go back to our teacher situation, the desk does not belong to the teacher. The classroom does not belong to the teacher. There is no expectation of privacy. Okay. All right. So if I, as a principal or an assistant principal, got, information that a teacher, has a gun in their desk, or there's something else, that certainly goes against our school rules, okay, then I can certainly go into that classroom because I have a key, and I can go into that desk because as an administrator, that desk does not belong to you. It belongs to my employer, our employer, and I can go through the desk and search it at any time.
Okay.
All right. But let's take that a step further. Okay, all this law stuff always just makes me so giddy. All right, what if the teacher has brought their own briefcase or book bag to school? Okay, and they leave it in the classroom. All right, so now we get a tip that they have. Let's say crack cocaine. You would hope a teacher wouldn't have crack cocaine at a school, okay? But let's say that they have crack cocaine in their bag. We've got a tip, okay, that seems like a really, really good tip, all right? When the tip doesn't say a whole bunch of teachers, it says this one particular teacher in this one particular book bag, and it's this color, and all of those things match, okay? Now, we're talking about me as an administrator, not me as the police, okay? Can I enter into that classroom? We know that I can, but does the teacher have an expectation of privacy in her book bag in that classroom? Tanisha, dear, tell us. What do you think?
I'm going to say they do have the right to some privacy there.
They do, absolutely. Because, see, that belongs to them, okay? And yes, you have a reasonable expectation of privacy. What does the Fourth Amendment say? All right? The Fourth Amendment says that we have, okay, what? I'm going to let you guys think about that for a minute. What does the Fourth Amendment say about unreasonable searches and seizures? I'll give you guys a minute to think about it. All right, think about it. Think about it. Think about it. It says that you have the right to what?
Be secure. Right.
In your what?
Person.
Yep.
Effects.
Yes. Papers, houses, right, okay? Well, your effects could be considered to be a book bag, okay? All right, and so okay, as an administrator at a school, can't just arbitrarily go through your bag, okay? So now what I can do is I can call the police.
Right.
And then what would the police need?
Well, probable cause, I guess, to go through your bag.
They would need probable cause, absolutely. What else then?
A warrant.
Yes, okay. Or they would need some other measure, okay, that would lead them to not have to get a warrant in order to go through your book bag. All right. So yes, that's the situation with that. Okay. In that situation, there is a reasonable expectation of privacy in your book bag in that classroom. Yes. Okay. So as a school administrator, I can go through the desk, but I should not be going through anybody else's book bag. Right. Okay. My authority only extends to students. Okay. That have a limited expectation of privacy, not to adults that do have an expectation of privacy. You may not have an expectation of privacy in the classroom in terms of the desk and in the closets within the classroom, but you do in your own things in that classroom. Absolutely. All right. And then again, if you feel as though, or as an administrator, that individual, that teacher has something illegal, then call the police and let them come and do an investigation and determine whether or not that's correct. All right. So, I just wanted to get into that a little bit, just to talk a little bit about, limited expectation of privacy for students based upon their age. Okay. I wanted to just go over a little bit about, well, how does that impact teachers that might be in schools? Again, teachers don't have a limited expectation of privacy. Only students do. Right. Okay. But again, when it comes to the classroom and the building, that belongs to the employer. It's the same in public or in private industry. So if you work at, some major Fortune 500 company, that's a private company. Well, you don't have an expectation of privacy. Okay. Because first of all, it's private. Okay. Second of all, you agreed to go there. Okay. Like when you agreed to go to the airport, you agreed to undergo certain safety and security measures for the safety of everyone. So you're giving up to some degree your Fourth Amendment rights, okay, for the protection of the many as opposed to just yourself.
Okay.
All right. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So can you think of anything else involving students, all right, which might call to question, a Fourth Amendment issue or something like that?
No.
No? Here, I can let me tell you one, okay, really quick. A lot of times we get this, okay? Well, I don't want you to question my child, okay? Without me present, all right?
Okay.
Well, I don't know where some parents get that from, okay? But as school administrators, remember, when they are under the authority of the school, all right, local parenti kicks in, all right, and school officials have a right to govern and maintain the school, okay? And so if they need to question your child, a student, about something that has happened, they don't need your permission. They can ask, they can question. Now, your child has a right to not answer. Okay. That's always there, because remember, we also have the Fifth Amendment that guarantees your right to silence,
Right.
But still, they have a right not to say anything. But then you, as a school administrator, have a right to take effective disciplinary measures. So if they won't answer you, or if you believe that they did do that, then you can certainly suspend, you can expel, you can write them up, you can call parents and all those kinds of things, okay? Because we still want students to be respectful and to cooperate. But if they choose not to cooperate, then if you have enough evidence, to move forward in a disciplinary measure, you can certainly do so.
Okay. So what if the questioning, or can they question about anything? So you said you're questioning about something that has to do with maybe something they did at school. Are they allowed to ask questions about maybe things that happen at home or other parts of that child's life?
Absolutely. Okay. And so we have to go back to this whole thing about local parenti. Well, teachers and school administrators are also responsible to the state if they observe or feel that there's some kind of abusive situation,
Right.
okay? So let's say I have a child in my office because they stole some food, okay, out of the cafeteria. And then I begin to ask them, well, why did you steal it? And they said, well, I'm hungry. And I'm like, okay, well, did you eat breakfast this morning? Well, no, sir, I didn't, okay? And then that piques your curiosity. Well, why not? Well, because my mom hasn't fed me. And then you ask the question, well, when was the last time you had some food? Well, the last time I had some food was yesterday when I stole it out of the cafeteria and you all didn't catch me. So now we have a situation where there's a possibility that there's an abuse situation or a neglect situation. So yes, we can start asking the child more questions, okay? Because according to the state, if we see or observe any sign of abusive situation or neglect situation, we not only, do we have the moral authority, legally, we have to question and we have to call the Department of Children and Family Services to notify them that we have a situation where there may be an abused or neglected child, and then they would come and investigate that.
Okay.
So absolutely, we can ask all of those kinds of questions.
Okay.
And so, so that's why we can always ask questions without parents, because there are some parents that may be in a situation where they don't want some neglect or abuse to be uncovered.
Right.
And so they want to come there so that they can intimidate the child, from talking to you.
Right.
We can't have those kinds of situations. And so, yes, that's why the courts, give parents school administrators the right to talk to and question students.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Makes
Yes.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So listen, thank you guys for joining us. We've gone over quite a bit of information. We talked about New Jersey versus TLO, which is the Supreme Court case, that standard that gave school authorities that legal standard of reasonable suspicion in order to search a student's bag if necessary. Certainly, school authorities have the right to question students, based upon that whole Latin term of local parenti. We talked about, how teachers, how that works with them in terms of their expectation of privacy. And we know that their expectation of privacy is not limited when they come on to school, but children does, okay? Or anyone that comes under the authority of the school. So you can be 18 if you go to that school, even though at 18 you're an adult, but if you are a student at that school, okay, your rights are limited, okay? Because you don't have to go there, okay? You don't. you can go somewhere else or not finish school. But when you go to that school, just like when you go to the airport, you say, okay, I'm allowing my rights to be limited in this situation for the benefit of the whole. Okay? All right. And so what we're going to do is the next time we get together, we're going to talk about another exception to the warrant requirement. I'll leave that one up in the air, so that you guys can start thinking about what are some exceptions to the warrant requirement. Once again, I want you to please like, share, and subscribe on my YouTube channel, and like, comment, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. Check out my website. It is www.jadenmiller.com. All right. Thank you guys again for this wonderful episode, for joining us, me and my wife, Tanisha. Tanisha, any last words you want to share?
Not really. This was really helpful information people need to know. So it was good.
Very good. It's always great to have her to join me. She's so good to look at, and she always participates and has some good stuff to say. So again, thank you guys. And we will see you on the next episode. Think About It with Jaden Miller. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Think About It with Jaden Miller. Don't forget to like and subscribe to his YouTube channel, and like and follow on your favorite podcast platform.